So for me, in my attitude and my approach, and it's a meditation, right? I have to remind myself, it's an affirmation, right? I'm here to do work. I'm here to grow. I've chosen this partner, and the painful things that come are just a part of those lessons, right? They're an additional part of those lessons. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. Don't get married. Go live by yourself. That's fine. It's a fine choice, but if you choose partnership, you're choosing challenge.
Hi, my name is Augustine Colebrook, and I'm the principal at Midwifery Wisdom Collective. I speak on this podcast about big picture, political issues, and the future of our profession.
Hey y'all, I am Jamara, and I'm a midwife. I'm also a birth justice activist, and this season I am looking forward to sharing stories of Black midwives and the communities they serve.
Hello, beloved birth community. I'm Angela Love, nurse midwife since 2004, preceptor, and mother. I have a home birth practice called Midwife Love and a national telehealth practice called Midwife RX. My mission is to keep birth choices available and to educate the next generation of midwives for our daughters and grandchildren. Matriarchy now.
I'm Layla Wyatt. I get to share with you the voices of student midwives from across the country and beyond. This season, we focus on those students who just graduated, are about to sit for the NARM, or did yesterday, and we get tips and tricks for you for what happens at the end of the student midwife journey.
For our listeners, let's introduce you, because there's a man on the Midwifery Wisdom Podcast. Who is this guy? Tell us about yourself.
Okay, well, my name is Adam Rawson. I live currently in Northern California. I run a small planning and design firm focused on sustainable development and permaculture. For 25 years, I've been married to the love of my life, Lisa Rawson of Mountain Valley Midwifery. We have 5 children together, and we've helped to raise 3 more. And when I'm not fathering and husbanding and working, I like to be outside and fish and hike and that kind of thing. So that's me in a nutshell.
True California mountain man. That's how I picture you. I've seen you out there in the mountains. Well, you're obviously married to one of my good friends, and I know both of you vicariously through each other in some ways. But you're married to a midwife, and that's what we're here to talk about. So I'm just gonna sort of jump right in, if that's okay.
Sure, let's do it.
What's the best part of being married to a midwife? Like, not just Lisa, but like the whole concept. What's the best part of it?
Right. Well, there are a lot of good things. If I spill a gallon of paint in my garage, there's always a Chuck's pad really close by. That's nice. Just kidding. No, that did happen.
Fantastic.
But gosh, there's a lot of good things. I think one of the great things about it is, I think a lot of us know that in order to be truly satisfied in life, you want to engage in activity and work that's satisfying, that has heart, that has meaning. And to be married to somebody who's engaged in that way in her life, and that level of satisfaction, makes me very happy to see my partner that happy. It also makes me happy to be a part of her team, and in some small way, I feel like I'm contributing to that greater purpose by supporting her. So that's really good. You also get a lot of gravitas in the community. People love her everywhere, and so everywhere I go, I get to meet nice people, and they're very grateful for her service. So, but there are a lot.
They love you because you love her. Yeah. Well, so there are a lot of new midwives who follow our channel, and I'm wondering if you could take a moment and talk to their partners. What advice would you give? Like, what has made it work for 25 years? Because I mean, let's be honest, midwifery is one of the most demanding professions. how has it worked? What do you give advice? What kind of advice do you give?
Yeah. As I understand it, a lot of marriages don't work when one of the partners is engaged in midwifery. A lot of partnerships have trouble in that way. Marriage in any partnership with any occupation is difficult and challenging and painful and hard. Even more so, I think, when you've got a partner who's engaged in that kind of demanding work. So a lot of the advice I'd give, to folks engaged in a partnership with a midwife would be similar to what advice I'd give to anybody in a marriage, in that there's hard work to do, and it's not easy. But if you can push through and find a way to make it work, then it's worth it on the other end. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but I believe that most marriages or partnerships last about 5 years. Most couples seek counseling at about 7 years. So the way those two line up, it's pretty clear that most people should be looking for help before they do. We work through marriage. In the early days, it's all a love affair, and then we very soon come up against things that we don't like and we can't stand and we can't work with. And we do everything we can, often, if we're both in it, to win it, to really push through and resolve those issues and those problems. Hopefully that's, communication and negotiation and agreement with our partner. But eventually we come up against a wall where we've used all of our tools and we just don't know what to do beyond that. And that's the time.
And I think everyone experiences that, right?
I think
so, that's not unique. They're kind of all long-term partnerships experience moments.
Right.
Where we just prolonged. Mm-hmm.
We get to a place where we just have nothing else that we know how to do. And so at that point, I use the analogy, if you're for me, if I'm building something in the shop and I come to realize I need a hammer, but I only have a wrench, well, I've got to go to the store and acquire a hammer. So whether that's consulting with family members or friends or more experienced folks, or counseling, marriage counseling is one of the things that helped us get through. I think you have to acknowledge when it's time to go beyond what you came with and find what you need to get through.
Yeah. What kind of resources have you guys relied on it's 25 years, right? You've been together 25 years?
It's about right. Yeah. 25 years or so. I think we've been married 23 and we were together 3, 4, 5 years before that. So,
do you have any rituals or things that reset when you're struggling, or when it's been a long birth and money's tight or something like that? How do you get through it?
Yeah, we had a period of time, I think it was probably 5 or 6 or 7 years where we did come up against that wall, and we were in a pretty tough place and didn't know where to go with it. We did a lot of talk with the family members who had been in long marriages or failed marriages or successful marriages, and the advice we got was for marriage counseling. So we actually went in for counseling, and we were lucky enough to connect with a very skilled counselor who helped us to gain some new tools. And I think a big part of that, an aha moment for both of us, was when we sat in the room and she said, neither one of you are really realizing or acknowledging that you're a team and a partnership. You've gotten hurt and you're backed up and you're angry, and you just have forgotten why you got together in the first place. And that was because you are excellently suited to be partners. So it's take that moment and realize, to acknowledge that we're in this together, and to take time together. She advised we go out on date nights and just forget all of the worldly troubles and just get back to that place of joy and love that we first had when we were first together. So I think over the years we've reminded each other, it's time to just kind of take some time together and go have a play date, really. Go have some fun together. The troubles of the world just never stop, so you've got to take those moments to get out.
Yeah. When I'm counseling young families, I always say you have to get the priority of time right, or the marriage is always going to struggle. And so for me, tell me if this rings true for you. This is what I tell people. You need to do something for yourself every day. every day, even when the babies are small, 5 minutes, light a candle, say a prayer, take a shower, something that's just for you, whatever needs to be done that day.
Yeah.
You need to do something for the couple every week.
Mm-hmm.
And so I recommend this weekly date night as well. You don't have to spend money. You can just, have dinner together, watch a funny movie, journal together, make art, go on a walk. But there needs to be some kind of date every week.
Yeah,
and then you do something for the family every month. And I think a lot of people have that reversed, and they like try to squeeze themselves in at the end of the whole process, or like forget that their marriage is a priority. And I love to hear you say that. How's that ring true for you?
That sounds right. It's really important. Really important to invest in each of those things and manage your time, balance, work balance. So I'm self-employed, Lisa's self-employed. It was difficult in the beginning to prioritize the things that needed to be, right? You just want to give it full bore to the wall on the business because you're trying to succeed. And then you find that you're maybe working weekends, you're working past dinner, and then other pieces of your life start to fall away. One way that Lisa
and then you add on call to that, and it's a disaster, right?
Yeah, it's a disaster. I think the first, when Lisa fully committed to her midwifery studies full time, the very first time she was called out on a birth was Christmas Eve. And for me, that was like very metaphorical. Like, okay, this is what we're doing. Another thing too is to have these consistently have conversations and renegotiate and come to agreement, right? A lot of people are just passive in their marriage, and marriage just kind of happens to them. Whereas Lisa and I approach it as, this is an agreement. All of the things that maybe are unspoken about, this is your job and this is my job, making an agreement, and then you feel proactive in your marriage. You feel like, I have agreed to this role. So that's helped quite a bit. And that needs to be renegotiated over time. So as life changes.
It does. Yeah. And it is ongoing negotiation, like you said. Well, so I'm sure you've been privy to lots of questions or lots of stories, lots of midwifery over the years. I'm kind of curious, like, what sticks out for you? Like, what's the most memorable or the most surprising from like things that you're told from her?
Well, as you know, Lisa's a rural home birth midwife, or has been for the majority of her practice. And here in Northern California, in the hills and the valleys, we have some pretty gnarly backwoods kind of homesteads. And so hearing stories of her, traveling at 3 a.m. in mud as deep as your ankles, in snow, on the side of cliffs, out in the middle of nowhere, 3 hours out to a home birth in a teepee, and then having to transport by helicopter, God forbid, once in a while. I mean, these insane superhero-like activities that she does. It's just mind-blowing and a little shaking, right? You worry about your spouse in these conditions, right? That was something that I didn't anticipate would come with the program, is just being concerned for her safety.
Yeah, her actual safety. Yeah. And I practiced a few hours north of her. We're in the special kind of emerald triangle, as they call it. So there's, oftentimes a lot of people carrying guns, and a lot of people like off grid, and a lot of people in kind of some sketchy realities. It's gotten better as life has gotten more legal around the green industry, but it's I remember being like legitimately scared of, you mix, guns and mental health, and it's always kind of a challenge. And I agree. Like, it's kind of scary to think about some of the situations that we're in. How did you deal with that?
Well, one of the good things is that in almost every culture, people love and respect a midwife. And so while she's entering into these zones where it's kind of a no-fly zone unless you live there, her having the placard on the side of her car, the community knowing that a midwife is coming. I can recall one story where there was actually a kind of an armed militia at the front gate of this development area. And when they acknowledge she's a midwife, they kind of wave her through. How did I deal with it? I guess we work together. She's accommodating to my concerns. We work together with things like, one of the things that really works for me is now anytime she's going to a birth, she texts me the address. I know where it's at. I know where she's going. I know the other midwives that might be there. So at least I have some sense of kind of where she's headed, where she'll be, when she'll be back. When she leaves the birth to come home, she'll text me on my way. So it kind of keeps me in the loop as far as what's going on and, when I can expect her to be home and that kind of thing. And that somewhat puts you at rest somewhat. But, these things are just difficult. Just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It's so intense. Well, so what has she missed in the years as a midwife in your family or couple life?
Well, we were fortunate enough, when we came together and we had young children, we were aligning our values that we wanted to have a parent at home with the kids in those early years. We both agreed on that, which was fortunate. A lot of times the way you align with your partner is luck, right? Hopefully, it's easy to fall in love, but, hopefully you align on things like religion, how to raise the kids, that kind of stuff. But we both acknowledged that we wanted a parent home because she was nursing and, she nursed for 13 years solid. But because she was the one nursing, she decided to stay home and care for the children while I worked. So we had that early time where mom could be home with the kids. And, truth be told, I working full-time missed out on some of that part. But I don't regret the decision. It was a sacrifice financially. But over the years now, we've got, the kids are older. She does miss out on a number of things, like there would be, maybe it's a school play on a Tuesday night that, boom, she's called out for a birth. A Christmas, for instance, a birthday, a family gathering. And that's unfortunate and oftentimes sad. But again, we've kind of proactively made this agreement and this understanding of what this is. So while there's sometimes a sadness about missing these things, there's never a resentment. There's never a resentment about the fact that she didn't make this event again. So again, that agreement helps.
But that's a good idea. But that's that's the brilliance of your relationship, of what you've negotiated. Is you've made space in your heart and in your life for all of it, for whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And I just want to dig into this a little bit because there are so many divorces in midwifery. There are so many troubled relationships. Where does it come from in your heart, in your head, in your life, in your experience? Where does it come from you where you're like 100%, I'm here for this?
Well, it's a good question. I think, maybe it's a combination of things. For one, these are skills and things we became conscious of when we worked through in our counseling sessions. But for me personally, and it's just my personality type, I always knew that if I were to join up with a partner, I wanted that partner to be all that she could be. I wanted her to be powerful and realized and, kicking butt in the world, strong. And that's what I got, my wife. So for me,
exactly what you got.
Yeah,
Be careful what you wish for.
For sure. I kind of came to the table with that to begin with. So I recognize how it's difficult for I see other colleagues who are having struggles in their marriage where that's not the approach. Some partners want a partner that's just quiet and compliant and easy. So that's going to be exceptionally difficult to integrate into that lifestyle. And I think it's worth mentioning too that when midwives are making their decisions about going into midwifery and in what capacity, right? There are a lot of different capacities, rural home birth midwife in a solo practice versus on-call shift, structured shift at a birth center. I think, a good piece of advice would be for a midwife to really take full assessment of her life, her family needs, her partner, her own values, and to make some decisions about where she's going to fit into the midwifery spectrum with a realistic sense of how that's going to affect her life. I think a lot of people
really good
don't
advice.
do that. It seems like a lot of midwives and anybody in any profession just gets kind of sucked in and is all of a sudden finds themselves in a situation where they're overloaded and overworked and it's not working. So kind of making some decisions ahead of time, taking an assessment would probably be helpful.
Being realistic. Yeah.
Realistic about what it
Yeah,
what it
I would
means,
say I also see a lot of home birth midwives kind of downplay. Like someone will be like, how's your oh, it's just beautiful. You know, we just catch babies and it's just beautiful. And like, certainly those are both part of the job, but they aren't always clear about everything. And when you're talking with someone who doesn't understand midwifery, you might gloss over it. But what you're saying, when you're talking with your partner, either you're already in midwifery and you're attracting a potential partner, or you're already partnered and you're looking at moving into midwifery, talking it really through. And there's a huge difference, like you're saying, working a shift in a birth center is really different than being the only one who makes sure whether two people live and die 24 hours a day for months and years on end. That's a very different reality. Yeah.
And I see I've seen it before with Lisa's colleagues where it's a similar situation. There's been a partner maybe at home with children. They have an existing system, and then it's just the announcement, I'm going to be a midwife, and the partner's like, oh, okay, great. And maybe neither one, especially the partner, doesn't really understand what that is. And then all of a sudden life is changing so quickly and so drastically, and there's not been a discussion, and there seems to be a resentment. It makes me cringe when I hear, of a partner who's just like, oh, great, she's gone again. I mean, it's like, wow, you folks really should have had this conversation.
Yeah. And I think it's both ways. Like, it's the conversation between the two, but then it's like what you're suggesting, the midwife really taking stock. How much am I going to work? How much am I going to be on call? How long am I going to be gone? Well, so speaking of being gone, there's always this kind of running joke in midwifery that every time you have sex, the phone rings.
Oh,
does this happen in your life?
Well,
you can be honest. It's okay.
Yeah. It's interesting. Again, anybody that has their own business knows this, right? That you're constantly, you have to be on point, especially if you're on call. So I think Lisa does a pretty good job of segregating work from home. For instance, a policy she has with her clients is, when you're in labor, you call me, you don't text me, right? So if we get a ping in the middle of the night or the morning or whenever it may be that we're together, she's not running to the phone to pick up a text, and neither am I. If the phone rings,
someone serious
you
about
gotta roll
something.
You got to roll with it. You know what I mean? It's just part of the.
Which is kind of a good idea, because then we're really talking about training your clients to use technology appropriately.
Right.
And that's a whole nother subject, which is really interesting.
Ongoing issue, right? The text at 5:30 in the morning, and she says, well, I've got a bit of a, 3 months in, and she's, I've got a little bit of a stomach ache. Do you think I need to, So training those clients by not responding to those texts at 4:30 in the morning on a Sunday. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's
every,
right.
Every
That's
client
such a good
example.
Yeah. Some take it a little easier than others, and some are pretty high needs because of trauma history or whatever's going on. But you just said something that's like, I'm really passionate about, and I talk about a lot, and that is like boundary setting and
boundaries.
And you saying you train them by not answering, and I think that's just such good advice. If they need something, they will call. And you just don't answer those texts outside of your normal business hours. That's what it's for. It just sits there and waits for you.
Right. And to answer your question more directly, if we are sharing intimate time and the kids pound on the door or the text goes off, we ignore it, and we hold that time to be sacred. If the phone rings, we stop, and she takes the call, and we go back to it, and we try to be humorous about it and lighthearted about it. There's no sense in there's no sense in getting angry about the things you've agreed to.
Yeah. And that's just wisdom right there. That's just like a big old wisdom mic drop right there. There's no sense in being upset about the things you've agreed to. That's brilliant. Well, so Adam, I want to talk about like kind of the shadow side, because I mean, you obviously have done a tremendous job. You guys are 25 years in and deeply committed and deeply in love. I know you both, and it's amazing. You're really mentors in this area. But there's some really not great parts about midwifery, and I'm just going to name off a few, and then I just would love it if you would kind of chime in with any you have to add, and also like what that's been like. So we've already said on call all the time, could leave at a moment's notice. Midwifery is sometimes a feast or famine profession. Insurance checks come rolling in, and then nobody calls for 3 months, and it can be a real roller coaster with having, especially in this like solo entrepreneur reality, it can be a real roller coaster sometimes. Sometimes there are bad outcomes, and sometimes preventable, sometimes not preventable. Both come with really heavy emotions. And there's many other things. So tell us a little bit, like, what's it been like being front row seat to the really big challenges?
The first word that comes to mind is overwhelming. Partners and midwives both need to understand the emotional needs and capacity of each partner. A lot of times Lisa will come home and she'll want to debrief a little bit about, maybe what happened and these kind of things. And I do my best to be supportive, but, to be honest, I'm just overwhelmed emotionally by the situation sometimes. And you don't want to say, babe, that's all I can do. You know what I mean? You want to talk to me about the challenging dystocia or the transport, fine. But, this is like beyond my capacity. Emotionally, and frankly, I can't relate. I can try to be compassionate, but I don't know what that feels like. I think early on in practice, there were a few times when she was really traumatized by, a painful situation. And while I sat through it because I understood that it was more painful for her than me, it really wore on me. And, ultimately, when it calmed down, we had to have a conversation about, look, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't process that with you. It's more than I can do. And on the other end too, from her as a midwife and maybe other midwives, you're not going to get the kind of processing that you might desire from a non-midwife, right? When she processes with her midwife colleagues, it's a deeper understanding and a deeper compassion that helps her to move beyond. One of the things, I made the mistake of saying early on, just trying to do my best, was like, well, mom and baby both survived, so that's all that matters. No, that's not all that matters. Definitely not all that matters, but that's all I had.
Right.
So for partners to be clear about their boundaries and capabilities, and for midwives to be clear about what they need and where they can get that. So try to be supportive, but you have to have people outside of yourself. One thing we learned early on is there's not one person that can fulfill all of your needs. Not one person.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
100%.
So you have colleagues, you might have friends, you have parents or mentors, but to look for everything to be satisfied by one person is just chasing the wrong trail.
It's a recipe for disaster, actually, because you will always be let down and you will always live in resentment. So absolutely, 100%. And of course, that's why we created the Midwifery Wisdom Collective, is to be a soft place to land when people are struggling in this really, really challenging profession. But you said something just so essential. Yeah, for sure. You said something so interesting. And I think it would resonate with other partners as well. You said, I'm not here for this. Like, I'm here for you, but I can't do this with you. I can't process a dystocia or a transport. And you've obviously learned so much over the years. You're familiar with the terms now, but yeah.
I like to say I'm a 19-year midwifery student.
Exactly.
I've only been to a couple births, and I haven't done any modules, but I'm on my best.
That's fantastic. But I love that clarity. And of course, that's what we do know about you and why your relationship works so well is that you guys do show up so clearly for each other. But I think a lot of partners don't have the self-confidence to come to that place. And they might just let someone process at them and grow kind of a wall or grow a thick skin, which then of course creates distance in the relationship and not closeness.
Yeah.
And I love what you said, because I think we should echo it louder and say, like, partners, it's okay to say, I'm not the right place for this. I'll hold you while you cry, but I can't be your peer review. I'm not a peer in this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And important for midwives to understand that they're seeking this level of processing that they just can't get from a layperson. They're just not going to get it because that layperson just doesn't understand.
Yeah. Even the compassionate 19-year student ones, they just don't quite understand. They don't quite understand. And I think that's important. And to make that distinction and that boundary ahead of time. What are some of the
back
other
to communication, right? Back to communication between partners, right?
Yeah.
Too many people just don't speak what's going on for them, and that gets you into trouble.
Yeah. It does. Yeah. We think that not rocking the boat or not being confrontational will keep things like harmonious and mellow, but actually the opposite happens. Yeah. Well, so what are some of the other really challenging experiences of being married to a midwife?
Well, you did say, and I want to come back to it, you touched on that feast or famine reality. That can be difficult. I think maybe we were more uniquely suited to that because I've run my own business for 25 plus years. And so it took, we've gotten kind of used to that reality and how to deal with it and how to cope with it emotionally. But that will be a big challenge for anybody going into self-employment of any kind or home practice as a midwife. Learning how to cope with that, maybe having backup alternative opportunities, or kind of assessing or being clear about how is this going to work financially for us. I've seen a lot of embittered partners who spent 5 years supporting a midwife through training, and now they've got a new business and they're just not making the money still, and it's now you're gone all the time and we're not making money. I mean, this is a real problem. It's a real challenge. That's difficult, and I don't know that it's for me to say how each team will work with that, but it's a reality. It's part of that discussion up front. Look, this is how this is going to look in the beginning of a new business. Being realistic about
those expectations again.
Like it'd be great to think, I'm going to start this business and tomorrow I'm going to be like full-time and plugged in and making good money. It's not usually the way it happens. That's difficult.
I think Lisa would be okay for saying this because she's pretty open and she's in a transition phase in her life and right now and what have you. But I know that Lisa, in supporting other midwives and in her long career, has had some really challenging outcomes. And no more than any other share. And this is not, to be at all shining lights anywhere inappropriately, but just like to really come to this place. Like if there were new midwives starting out, or actually if they got their partners to listen to this podcast, what would you recommend in those moments? They call you from the birth and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to the hospital, or, oh my God, a call I made once was, I'm standing outside of the hospital, it's snowing and I'm in socks.
Right.
I have no wallet. I have no car. Like, can you please come get me? Because if you transport so quickly, you don't even have time to put shoes on. Like you don't, so I'm just wondering, like, what advice do you have, or like, how have you dealt with like the really, really hard moments?
Well, Lisa and I have had some hard moments, not just with her practice. We were young parents. I was in college. She had a lot of young kids at home. We didn't have a lot of money. Difficult, right? We learned, and maybe it's just part of our personality, to just rally. You know, this is your partner. You do what is required for your family, for your partner. In that instance, you get in your car and you drive to the hospital, and it's just part of the sacrifice that goes along with partnership, and especially with partnership with the midwife. You rally. You're lucky if you can develop some outside support, if you have family members, if you have friends, if you have, you know, good relationships with colleagues, for instance. You try to build that support system a little bit beyond the walls of your own household as best you can. Marriage is tough, and you just got to rally sometimes. Family life is tough. You just have to show up, and it's just part of the program.
Where do you get that inspiration from? Like, I get that for you, it's so obvious. It's like you have to, but like,
yeah, I wish I had a better answer. I wish I had a better answer or a more technical answer. Reaching for technical answers by like expanding support system, right? Being prepared, being
those layers
ready.
of support.
I'm reaching for technical. You know, where do I get that inspiration? I don't know. I acknowledge that that's probably just a part of my personality, and maybe that's, you know, that's part of my privilege in the world, is I have that kind of outlook, and Lisa has that outlook.
You do both have indomitable positivity.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to grab the bull by the horns in life, and you have to make it happen. And maybe that's, you know, maybe that's a slightly narrow focus, because I know some people just don't have those personality traits, and that's just not who they are. But I can only speak from my.
Can be
my
cultivated.
Experience.
I think they can be cultivated for sure.
It's an attitude. It's an attitude. It's always remembering this is not just an inconvenience. This is a partnership. This is she and I are working together, and this is our plan and our program. And when she needs me to rally for her, I do. And when I need her for me, she does. And it's an attitude and an agreement, I think.
Yeah. And I like the opposite of that would be that your partner's requests cause you inconvenience or frustration or pain.
And they do. Yeah.
Right?
And they do.
And so you have to flip that and be like, my partner's requests are a part of my requests. Like, I see them as my own.
Right. Part of our program.
Right.
Team partnership.
Right.
You have to constantly remind yourself that you're on the same team working for the same goals, right?
Yeah. Well, I think some of our listeners will be like jealous of Lisa. And I wonder if you could tell people how to find someone more like you. Like, what are the obvious traits? Like, how did you present? Maybe this is a question for Lisa, but like, how do they find people like you? Like, what are some of those, that made you ripe to be a midwife's partner? Like, what makes you so unique in that place? And I think you are really unique. I want you to know, Adam, I think you really are.
Maybe so.
And
Thank you.
I think yours and Lisa's relationship is really unique.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not smoothing. You didn't have a huge amount of like help or resources. You guys are really self-made, and I think that you've both grown tremendously in this relationship as well.
I think that hits on an important point about partnership and marriage, right? My attitude is that we're here on this earth to learn and to grow spiritually as individuals. And I've found in the course of my life that the best way to learn and grow is in relationships with others. Because if you're sitting alone, you've got it all figured out and you've got it all together. And then you get a partner or a child that comes in and starts pushing your buttons and letting you know what the next piece of work you have to do is. So for me, in my attitude and my approach, and it's a meditation, right? I have to remind myself, it's an affirmation, right? I'm here to do work. I'm here to grow. I've chosen this partner, and the painful things that come are just a part of those lessons, right? They're an additional part of those lessons. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. Don't get married. Go live by yourself. That's fine. It's a fine choice, but if you choose partnership, you're choosing challenge. I have to constantly remind myself of that. I chose this. I'm choosing this. I'm active.
Yeah.
How do you find your partner?
That's some
I don't know.
personal responsibility right there. Yeah.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you choose your partner? I think I touched on this, right? Like you meet someone, you fall head over heels in love, and that's it, you're in. What we don't often do is take an accounting of where we actually line up. And for Lisa and I, we actually lucked out on a lot of really important things. But I think it's natural that you're not going to line up on everything.
Yeah.
If you're on the path of midwifery, to be clear about what traits you might need in a partner, right? Flexibility, openness, maybe creativity, being able to be dynamic. I've got people in my life who they make plans, and if there's one little adjustment, they're just thrown off and they're miserable. So like that's not going to be an easy trait to deal with if you're in a situation or an occupation where you are on call and things are dynamic and always changing. I'm not saying that any of those assessments trump falling in love, but it'd probably be wise to assess some of those things before you get into a deeper commitment. Not that I did.
Yeah. I know we're so young and innocent, right? And then then it figures out. Yeah. Well, Adam, I'm so grateful to have this conversation with you. You have so much wisdom to share. You belong on the Midwifery Wisdom Podcast for sure. I guess I would say as we wrap up, what is your kind of hope for the future? Because you guys are in a transition. Lisa's changing her practice style or location some. I think you guys kind of had a move maybe in mind.
Yeah.
What's this second stage? What's this next stage? And, kind of from a broad perspective, what are you hoping will stay the same or what are you hoping will change?
Yeah, I think it seems to be that people change throughout the course of their lives. Most people. They evolve and they change, and you need to allow yourself and your partner to change and evolve. Sometimes we get comfortable. We want to hold each other to this form, and we need to allow each other to change and evolve. And Lisa and I are both changing and evolving. She's moving from a solo home birth rural midwifery practice to her next phase of work. I've had my business for a long time. I'm moving to my next stage of work, looking at, the next 15, 20 years. What's that look like? So we're from the Northwest. We met in the Pacific Northwest, had some kids there. We moved down here. We've been down here about 10, 15 years. And for a lot of different reasons, we're kind of moving back up toward the Northwest. She's really good. Lisa's really good at fleshing out her interests and opportunities. So she's kind of been assessing, what does my next step look like? Well, it might look like this and it might look like this. And so there's this period of transition where she's testing those things out, feeling those things out. So it is we're in this kind of flux in life where not exactly sure where we're going to end up. But you don't always have to know how you get to a place. Right? The first thing you really need to do is visualize where you want to be, what your goal is, what's that end piece, and it's not up to you to have all the steps figured out. You visualize the goal, and then you start backing up and looking, and moving toward it. And oftentimes, the universe kind of rises to meet you in that way. What will stay the same? Our partnership, our humor. We have humor in our marriage and in our friendship, and that gets us through a lot. Our commitment to each other, our commitment to pursuing work with heart and meaning. All the details are probably going to shift pretty strongly. So that's where we're at.
How beautiful. Well, all of my love to both of you. And you've both been on my podcast now, so I feel very lucky. I think our listeners are lucky to hear both of your wisdom. If you want to listen to Lisa's interview, we'll link that in the show notes. Adam, thank you so much. I wish you all nothing but the best. And we're really grateful for you sharing your wisdom tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Augustine. I hope it's helpful in some way.